Protests continue in Minneapolis and across the country after a woman was shot and killed in broad daylight by a federal immigration officer. And we should warn you, the video is disturbing. It shows 37-year-old Renee Good appearing to back up in her car as an agent tries to open the driver's side door. Then, as she begins to pull away, another officer draws his gun and fires multiple rounds, killing her. The Trump administration claims Good, who is a U.S. citizen, was trying to run over the ICE officer and was shot in self-defense, and that she was using her vehicle as a weapon. Local officials and many witnesses dispute that. Her death is sparking outrage and protests in the Twin Cities and other parts of the country. This was the scene outside a federal building in Minneapolis as protesters faced off against federal agents. The shooting comes days after the Trump administration launched what it called the, quote, largest immigration operation ever, sending more than 2,000 federal agents into the area for a crackdown tied in part to alleged fraud on the part of some members of the Somali community there. Today, we heard from both DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on the shooting and the investigation.
When these individuals use their vehicles to try to ram our law enforcement and to put their lives in jeopardy, that law enforcement officer has to make a decision to protect his life and the individuals around him as well.
It feels very, very difficult that we will get a fair outcome. And I say that only because people in positions of power have already passed judgment, from the president to the vice president to Kristi Noem, have stood and told you things that are verifiably false.
Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Sganga joins us now from Minneapolis. So, Nicole, you have been there for several days, both preceding this event and seeing the aftermath throughout. We're learning more about the driver, Renee Good. We're learning more about the ICE officer. We know that tensions are very high where you are. Schools are closed. What's the atmosphere like in the city?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I mean, we noticed that tensions were high in the city of Minneapolis even before this shooting happened. When we embedded with federal law enforcement earlier this week, it was very clear that anywhere there was a presence of ICE agents, there was a crowd that would surround protesters. Got close to seeing some clashes even before what happened on Wednesday played out. Then, of course, you know, Wednesday was kind of like the tinderbox ignited. And in the hours after that fatal shooting, we saw agents deploying tear gas. We saw on the ground violent protesters, angry protesters trying to physically confront law enforcement there on the ground. Now, later last night, we saw sort of a settling of some of the demonstrations, and it was much more of a vigil atmosphere, but truly an enormous number of people who flooded to the scene of the crime, hundreds and hundreds of them to lay flowers, to take a moment to say prayers, to sing songs, to remember Renee Nicole Good, the 37-year-old woman who was fatally shot during this incident. As for today, there have been some, isolated altercations, we're told, outside the Whipple Federal Building nearby, but a much calmer environment. Still, it really does feel like perhaps Minneapolis is bracing, sort of waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Nicole, if you can hear me, I want to ask you about, in terms of deadly force and the protocol for Homeland Security, because their protocol states that a law enforcement officer shall only use the force that is objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances confronting him or her at the time the force is applied. Was this, I guess my question is there room for doubt here whether this officer followed protocol?
Yeah, I mean, I think this question is twofold, and I've spoken with countless federal agents yesterday, today, to sort of hear their perspective on this. And what they have told me is, no one really knows whether or not there was a feeling of imminent threat on the part of the federal law enforcement agent, aside from that ICE agent who was responding in that moment. Of course, there are lots of people weighing in and speculating on this video whether or not the car was pulling out to avoid the agents or driving toward them. What has been made clear to me in discussions with several law enforcement agents, however, is that the positioning of the agent in this case, the way in which he approached the car, approached that red SUV from the front, really cuts against every DHS protocol and also what someone with this individual's training would have been taught to do. I mean, CBS News has reported that the agent involved in the shooting was not new to the job, had 10 years experience, was based in the Minneapolis area, and was a member of the special response team. So a lot of questions regarding if the agent followed protocol when he first approached that vehicle. The FBI is looking into this and is now leading the investigation to get to the bottom of exactly what protocols might have been missed here.
Nicole Sganga, thank you.